I want to start today's deep dive with a number that, frankly, it made me do a double take. $29,000.
That is a very specific number,
Yeah,
and a significant one.
it is. According to the data we're looking at from Forbes, that's the average annual salary increase linked to a specific set of skills.
Right.
But here's the catch, and this is what we need to unpack. It has nothing to do with coding. It's not about having an MBA. It isn't about how many hours you log in the office.
No. It's the return on investment for emotional intelligence.
Exactly. And if that financial hook wasn't enough to get everyone listening, we have this massive survey from TalentSmart in our stack today. They analyzed top performers across a huge range of industries. And what they found was that 90% of the people just crushing it, they score high in this specific trait.
And conversely, among the low performers,
Only 20%.
it creates a pretty undeniable correlation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We spend so much of our educational lives, obsessing over IQ and technical proficiency.
Yeah.
But the data suggests the real differentiator, the thing that actually separates the good from the exceptional, is EQ.
So that is our mission for this deep dive. We are peeling back the layers on emotional intelligence. We're not just talking about being nice or, having feelings.
Much deeper than that.
We have academic papers from the University of Graz, frameworks from Daniel Goleman, workplace analysis from Harvard. We're going to decode the mechanics of how this works, the history, which is surprisingly evolutionary. And we need to have a serious talk about the self-awareness gap.
Ah, yes, the gap. That's the part that usually scares people when they see the actual statistics.
It scared me when I read the prep notes. But before we get to the existential crisis, let's ground this. Emotional intelligence is a buzzword, right? Gets thrown around in every HR meeting.
It does.
But structurally, what are we actually talking about?
Okay, so if we cut through all the corporate fluff, the most accepted definition is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions. And this part is crucial, the emotions of others.
It sounds simple.
It sounds simple, but it's really a multi-layered cognitive engine.
And the blueprint most of us know, I think, is Daniel Goleman's model. He's the one who really put this on the map.
Goleman is the titan here. He popularized that four-quadrant framework. You've got the internal side, self-awareness, and self-management.
So can you read your own data and control your reaction?
Exactly. Then you have the external side, social awareness and relationship management. Can you read the room and influence the outcome?
Right. And underneath those four headings, there are, 12 specific competencies? Things like empathy, conflict management, adaptability.
Yes. But I think you found a distinction in the Goleman research that really changes the whole view on this.
I did. He separates skills into threshold competencies and distinguishing competencies.
And this is such a critical nuance. Threshold competencies are the bare minimum, the entry ticket.
So for an engineer, that's IQ, math skills.
Maybe some basic pattern recognition. You need those just to get the job. But Goleman's argument is that because everyone in that role has those skills, they stop being predictors of success.
They become commodities. It's like if everyone has a driver's license, having a license doesn't make you a Formula One driver.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
So once you are in the door, the distinguishing competencies, the things that push you into that top 10%, are almost entirely emotional.
The drive to achieve, the ability to influence without authority.
Emotional self-control, yes.
So IQ gets you hired, EQ gets you promoted.
That is the shorthand, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it explains why the smartest person in the room isn't always the CEO.
But Goleman isn't the only perspective in our source stack. It seems like there's a bit of an academic debate on how to even measure this.
Oh, there's a split, for sure. On one side, you have the ability model, championed by researchers like Peter Salovey and John Mayer.
Okay.
They view EI strictly as a mental ability, almost like a math problem, but with feelings.
So, like looking at a face and correctly identifying contempt versus anger.
Precisely. It's cognitive processing of emotional information. Can you just map the data? On the other side, you've got the mixed model, like the one from Ruve and Baron.
And that approach says,
what?
It says, okay, processing is great, but we also need to include personality traits.
Things like optimism, stress tolerance, assertiveness.
Right. Baron defines it as an array of non-cognitive capabilities that influence your ability to cope with what life throws at you. So the ability model asks, can you understand this? While the mixed model asks, do you have the character to handle this?
It's so interesting that we treat this as some modern discovery, something that just popped up in the 90s to sell books.
Right.
But reading through the history, this conversation has been happening for,
Yeah.
Thousands of years.
It really has. If you look at Aristotle, he was talking about sophrosyne.
Sophrosyne. That's a great word.
It's this idea of emotional restraint and balance. Aristotle knew that emotions weren't just random noise, they were integral to wisdom. If you couldn't manage your internal state, you couldn't be a leader, or a good citizen for that matter. And then we jump forward to the 1870s and Charles Darwin. I always think of Darwin and survival of the fittest as purely physical, who has the sharpest claws.
But he had a totally different take on feelings. He was fascinating because he framed emotions as a kind of survival technology.
A technology.
Yeah. He argued that natural selection honed our emotions to help us survive and connect. Think about it. If you're a primitive human and you can't read the aggression on a stranger's face instantly, you die.
So emotions are just data.
High-speed, life-saving data. If you ignore the data, you get eaten.
And that thread continues through the 20th century. You've got Freud looking at the unconscious, and then in 1964, Michael Beldock actually coins the phrase emotional intelligence.
He does, but it stayed pretty niche, right? Very academic.
It did, until 1983.
All right, Howard Gardner. He completely disrupted the education world with his theory of multiple intelligences.
He basically said, stop measuring everyone by one single test.
Exactly. And he introduced interpersonal intelligence, understanding others, and intrapersonal intelligence, understanding yourself.
Which just laid the runway for the explosion in the 90s.
1990 was the academic turning point with Solovey and Mayer's big paper, but the cultural explosion was 1995. Daniel Goleman publishes Emotional Intelligence. Why it can matter more than IQ.
And suddenly it's on the cover of Time magazine.
Every CEO wants it. It went from a psychological theory to a corporate mandate almost overnight.
Which brings us to the danger zone, because everyone started talking about it, everyone put it on their resume. But the data suggests we're fooling ourselves. Let's talk about the self-awareness paradox.
This is the study by Tasha Eurich from Harvard. And the numbers are humbling.
Brutal is the word I'd use.
Eurich found that if you survey people and ask, are you self-aware? About 95% of people say yes, absolutely.
Of course. And the reality.
Only about 10 to 15% actually meet the criteria for being self-aware.
That is a massive delta. Statistically speaking, the vast majority of people listening to this deep dive, and, quite possibly the two of us, think we know how we're coming across to the world, but we're completely delusional.
It's the human condition.
Yeah.
We judge ourselves by our good intentions, but everyone else judges us by our actions.
And there's a kicker.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the kicker. The higher you go in an organization, the wider that gap tends to get.
The CEO bubble.
Exactly. Think about it. When you're a junior employee, people give you feedback constantly. Fix this, don't say that. As you get more power, that feedback loop just dries up.
People are scared to criticize you.
They're terrified. You make a bad joke, everyone laughs, you act moody, people just tiptoe around you, you lose the mirror.
So if we can't trust our own self-assessment, what are the red flags? How do I know if I'm the one with low EQ?
There are definite telltale signs. Low EQ often shows up as feeling constantly misunderstood. If you find yourself always saying, I didn't mean it that way, you're being too sensitive, that's a huge red flag.
Because it's minimizing the other person's reality.
Totally. Another sign is viewing emotions as binary. Just, I feel good or I feel bad. High EQ involves what we call granularity.
Granularity.
Yeah, it's not just feeling bad. It's being able to distinguish between feeling frustrated or anxious or disappointed or dejected.
I loved that example in the notes about the feeling of awe.
Yes, high EQ is understanding that awe isn't just one simple feeling. It's a complex cocktail of, say, fear and surprise. And being able to parse that complexity allows you to manage it. If you don't have the vocabulary, you can't regulate the feeling.
Okay, let's pivot to application. We know the theory, we know the salary bump, but what does this look like in the wild? The Motorola case study from the Forbes source, it jumped out at me because the productivity jump was just absurd.
93%.
A 93% increase in productivity just by introducing stress management and EQ training. How is that physically possible?
It comes down to biology.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the amygdala hijack.
The lizard brain.
The lizard brain, yeah. When you're stressed or emotionally deregulated, your amygdala takes over. It literally cuts off access to the prefrontal cortex, which is where you do your logic, your planning, your problem solving.
The stress actually makes us physically stupider?
It functionally lowers your IQ in that moment. That Motorola training didn't teach them how to assemble phones faster. It taught them how to keep their prefrontal cortex online.
So if you can stay calm, you can problem solve. If you panic, you freeze.
Precisely. And it's not just the factory floor.
Mhm.
The Dulavis and Higgs study looked at the boardroom.
Right.
They found the EQ, IQ, and managerial competencies combined account for 71% of the variance in who gets promoted. But EQ is the weighted variable,
IQ is the threshold.
and EQ is the engine of advancement. If you
Mhm.
can't manage your own stress, you certainly can't manage a team stress.
But this isn't just about work. The sources dive pretty deep into relationships, even parenting. And I think this is where that people-pleasing misconception really needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. A lot of people think high EQ just means making everyone happy. Oh, I have high EQ because I never fight.
Which is actually a sign of low EQ.
Often, yes. Or maybe an anxious attachment style.
So what does high EQ look like in a relationship then?
It looks like boundaries. It's knowing your own emotional needs well enough to communicate them clearly without aggression. It's the difference between you never listen to me, which is an attack,
Right.
and saying, I feel lonely when we don't talk after dinner. That's a specific emotional data point.
And the notes also touched on attachment styles: secure, anxious, avoidant.
Understanding those is part of social awareness. If you know your partner is avoidant, meaning they shut down when they get overwhelmed, a high EQ approach isn't to chase them down and demand an answer right then.
No.
It's to recognize they're flooded, give them space to regulate, and then re-engage later. It's strategic empathy.
Speaking of regulation, we have to talk about the Lego tower story. As a parent, I felt this one.
It's a classic scenario, isn't it?
Yeah.
A kid has a meltdown at the dinner table. The parent thinks he's just being a brat about the broccoli.
Mm-hmm.
But if the parent actually stops and investigates, the child might admit, I'm mad because I couldn't finish my Lego tower before dinner.
So the behavior was resistance, but the emotion was frustration with unfinished business.
Exactly. And the kid doesn't have the vocabulary to say, Mother, I am experiencing a lack of closure regarding my architectural project. They just scream.
So what's the fix?
Name it to tame it. This is backed by neuroscience. Simply labeling an emotion, I can see you are frustrated about the Legos. It reduces activity in the amygdala.
It actually calms the brain down.
Instantly. For parents, using visual tools like faces charts, where kids can point to what they feel is incredibly powerful. It builds that granularity we talked about earlier.
And the long-term data on kids who learn this is impressive. Better grades, fewer behavioral issues.
It sets the foundation for everything. You're giving them the software to handle the hardware of life.
Okay, so let's get practical. I'm listening to this. I'm worried I'm in that 95% of people who aren't self-aware. Is this fixed? Is my EQ score tattooed on me? Like my height?
That is the best news in all the research. IQ is relatively static. Your processing speed is your processing speed, but EQ is highly plastic. You could develop it at age 20, 40, or 60.
So what's in the gym bag? How do we build this muscle?
Strategy number one is granularity, which we've mentioned. Stop using lazy words like upset. Force yourself to be specific. Are you apprehensive? Are you resentful?
The more specific you are, the better you can solve the actual problem.
It's like a doctor diagnosing an illness. You can't treat sick. You can treat flu.
Perfect analogy. What's next?
Strategy number two is the pause. This is all about managing that amygdala hijack.
The old count to 10 rule.
It sounds cliche, but it's biological. The chemical flood of anger lasts about 90 seconds. If you can just delay your reaction by 2 minutes, take a walk, get some water, shut the laptop, you literally allow the chemicals to flesh out so your rational brain can take the wheel again.
What about the self-awareness gap? If we can't see ourselves, how do we fix that?
You have to outsource the mirror. You need a 360 audit. You have to ask trusted colleagues, friends, or family for honest feedback.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. But you have to ask specific questions. Not, am I a good boss? But, what is one thing I do in meetings that shuts down conversation?
And then, and this is the hard part, you have to listen without defending yourself.
Just take the data. If you get defensive, they will never tell you the truth again. You have to just thank them for the data point.
Okay, one of the more surprising strategies in the source stack was reading literature, like fiction.
Yeah, it makes sense when you think about it. Reading a complex novel forces you to inhabit the mind of a character who is not you. You're simulating social perspectives.
You're practicing empathy in a low-stakes flight simulator.
That's a great way to put it. It's cognitive cross-training.
We have covered a lot, from Aristotle to Lego towers to the boardroom. If we had to boil this down to a single why, what is it?
I would go back to Goleman's assertion. Emotional intelligence is the sine qua non of leadership.
Sine qua non without which there is nothing.
Exactly. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't bridge that gap between your ideas and other people, nothing actually happens. EI is the bridge.
And looking forward, this feels even more urgent. We talk a lot about AI on this show.
And that's really the final takeaway from the sources. As machines get better at the technical stuff, the logic, the coding, the data analysis, those threshold competencies we talked about, they're going to be automated.
The AI can write the code. It can do the math.
Right. So the uniquely human ability to navigate emotions, to build trust, to motivate a team through a crisis, that becomes the true competitive advantage. It's the one thing AI can't really do yet.
So your feelings aren't a distraction from your work. They might be the only thing that keeps you relevant.
That's a powerful way to put it.
So here's a challenge for everyone listening. We know the statistics say you probably aren't as self-aware as you think you are. So identify one person today, someone you trust, and ask them for one piece of honest feedback. And see if you can just listen to the answer without explaining why they're wrong.
It's a brave move, but it really pays off.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.